Have you ever wondered what would happen if Seishiro Nagi was reincarnated with all his memories? What would he do differently in Blue Lock? And, more importantly, could he actually become the absolute #1 striker in the world? I'm Shoyo, and if you want to see Nagi in this new timeline, go ahead and drop a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on anything. Now, let's dive right into the video. So, when Nagi wakes up, he'd find himself holding the official invitation letter for the Blue Lock project. But this time, his eyes wouldn't look bored or checked out. That's because he'd have all his memories totally intact. He'd clearly remember his failures, his over-reliance on Reo, and that terrifying wall he hit when his soccer just stopped being fun. This time around, he wouldn't just get dragged into Blue Lock by Reo. Nagi would decide to join on his own, promising to find his true ego from day one and completely dodge the mistakes that held back his growth. But before even stepping foot in the facility, Nagi would do something completely insane for a guy like him. He'd actually start training seriously. And guys, I gotta say, a super motivated Nagi willing to put in the hard work is a genuinely terrifying concept. Knowing his past weaknesses, he'd spend the entire month before the project starts completely leveling up his stamina. Obviously, he'd still want to win the World Cup alongside Reo, but this time, their dynamic would completely shift. Nagi would sit down with Reo and explain that if they wanted to survive and conquer the world, they'd both need to develop their own individual egos. Hearing that coming from Nagi of all people would leave Reo absolutely shook, but it would also ignite a massive fire inside him. Instead of just being the shadow supporting Nagi, Reo would stop existing purely to help him reach his goals and start chasing his own style of soccer. Once they entered the Blue Lock facility, Team V would absolutely dominate the first selection, just like in the original story. But here's where things get super interesting. Using his future knowledge, Nagi would find a low-key way to tip off Team Z about Kuon's betrayal before the match against Team W. He wouldn't say it outright to avoid raising ego suspicions, but he'd leave enough tactical breadcrumbs on the field for someone like Isagi to figure out the situation. Without Kuon's betrayal throwing the team under the bus, Team Z would easily beat Team W. That means when Team Z faced Team V in the final round, they'd already have enough points to advance, even if they took the L. And when that final showdown happened, it would be an absolute massacre. Even if Isagi awakened his formula for scoring goals, Nagi's insanely boosted stamina and his new reproducible finishing techniques would just be totally broken. Team V would defeat Team Z 5-4. Just like before, Team Z would still advance in second place, but Nagi would finish the first selection completely undefeated. From that exact moment on, Isagi wouldn't just see Rin as his ultimate goal. He'd start looking at Nagi as his biggest rival in Blue Lock. Moving into the second selection, Nagi would make a decision that changes the course of the story forever. He'd decide to temporarily split up with Reo. Instead, he'd form a trio with Isagi and Bachira. Why? Because Nagi knew those two were the only players in that block capable of forcing him to think outside the box and create entirely new plays mid-game. But wait, what would happen to Reo now that he was completely on his own without his main weapon? Don't worry, we'll get back to him in a second. For now, Nagi's insanely OP new trio would march straight to the top and challenge Rin, Ryu, and Tokimitsu. In the original timeline, this is when Nagi's team got completely humbled and destroyed. But remember, now we're talking about a way stronger, smarter, and physically prepped Nagi. Once the match started, Rin would try to manipulate the field like he always did, controlling all the players like puppets. However, Nagi's off-the-ball movement would be totally unpredictable. He wouldn't just wait around for Isagi's passes. Nagi would actively destroy Rin's puppet master soccer, darting into blind spots that not even Rin had calculated. The match would be incredibly intense, pushing Isagi and Bachira to their absolute limits as they tried to keep up with Nagi's crazy pace. Ryu would try to use his reach, but Nagi would easily outposition him. Not even Tokimitsu's practically infinite stamina would be enough to stop Nagi's relentless offensive pressure. In the final, deciding play, Nagi would bust out a brand new finish, trapping the ball ambidextrously before shooting and completely shattering Rin's spatial awareness. Yeah, you heard that right. Nagi's team would beat Rin's team 5-4 on their very first try. And guys, the look of absolute shock on Rin's face would be priceless. After the hard-fought win, Nagi wouldn't hesitate. He'd immediately pick Rin to join his team. The new lineup would be Nagi, Isagi, Bachira, and Rin. An absolutely broken, god-tier squad that pretty much no one could beat. Now, bouncing back to Reo. Without Nagi to finish his passes, Reo would be forced to pave his own way to survive. He'd team up with Chigiri and Kunigami, forming an extremely well-balanced and offensive trio. Following the matchup order, they'd face off against Baru, Naruhaya, and Zentetsu, awakening his own ego way earlier than in the original timeline. Ryo's chameleon-like skills would really shine. He'd copy Zentetsu's acceleration and combo it with his own tactical vision, leading his team to a comfortable W and picking King Baru to join their squad. This would set the stage for the most hyped match of the entire second selection. It wouldn't be Rin versus Isagi. It would be Nagi, Isagi, Bachira, and Rin facing off against Reo, Baru, Shigiri, and Kunigami. When the 4v4 kicked off, Nagi would quickly realize that Reo was built different now. Reo would use his deep knowledge of Nagi's habits to completely shut down his old plays. Whenever Nagi tried to go for a standard trap, Reo would already be there waiting to intercept it. On top of that, the insane pressure of facing such a stacked team would make Baru awaken his chaotic, villainous ego ball way earlier than expected. He'd cause total chaos on the pitch, devouring his own teammates just to score. The match would be a brutal, suffocating back and forth shootout. It would prove that even with future memories, Nagi wouldn't be able to control everyone else's evolution. But still, Nagi's team would just be way too overpowered. Combining Isagi's genius spatial awareness, Rin's deadly precision, Bachira's unpredictable dribbling, and Nagi's reproducible finishing, they'd slowly choke out their opponents. In a lightning-fast final sequence, Nagi would score the winning goal, ending the game at 5-4. After the match, Nagi would walk up and choose Ryo, but he wouldn't do it out of dependency or just because he wanted his old passer back. He'd pick Ryo because he was the only player on the field capable of completely neutralizing his old style, forcing Nagi to go hard and evolve even further. The first team to officially clear the second selection would be Nagi, Isagi, Bachira, Rin, and Ryo. Next up, they'd face the World 5. With a team this ridiculously stacked, you'd probably think they actually had a shot at winning, right? Well, not exactly. The World 5 would still be absolute monsters. Even though Nagi would score an insane solo goal after blowing past Pablo Cavazos and later dish out an assist for Rin to score a brilliant second goal. The gap in physical stats, speed, and pro experience would just be too huge. Loki would speed blitz everyone, while Silva would completely shred their defense. Blue Lock would lose the match 5-2. This would be Nagi's first L in this entire timeline. But instead of feeling crushed or unmotivated, Nagi would smile. That defeat would bring him right back down to earth, serving as a brutal reminder that the world level was still a massive wall he desperately needed to climb. Thanks to his practically flawless run up to that point, beating Isagi, totally outplaying Rin, clearing the second selection in first place, and managing to score against the World 5 Jinpachi Ego, would officially rank Nagi as the absolute #1 player in Blue Lock. Rin would drop to the #2 spot and become completely obsessed with destroying Nagi to reclaim his throne. Meanwhile, Isagi would hyper-focus all his attention on surpassing Nagi's genius. During the third selection, Nagi would dominate every single trial he took part in. He'd systematically prove that he was no longer just relying on his trapping skills. Nagi would be able to manipulate defenders, just using his eyes, sync up with pretty much any playstyle, and produce reproducible goals on demand. Naturally, Ego would have no choice but to name Nagi as the starting striker for the Blue Lock 11 in the ultimate showdown against the Japan U20 national team. And guys, the match against the U20 team would be absolutely legendary. Seitoshi would draw first blood, scoring a beautifully cold finish for the U20 team and completely silencing the stadium. But a totally locked-in Nagi would respond immediately. Using his buffed physical stats, he'd tear right through their rock-solid defense and rip a powerful shot into the back of the net, tying up the game. A little while later, Rin would enter flow state and score, putting Blue Lock in the lead. But the U20 team wouldn't back down. Shido Ryusei would sub in and go absolutely crazy. Linking up perfectly with Sae, Shido would score 2 back-to-back acrobatic goals, completely flipping the script to make it 3-2 for the U20 squad. Just when all hope seemed lost for Blue Lock, King Baru would step onto the pitch and unleash his chaotic ego. He'd steal the ball from his own teammates and fire off a cannon of a shot to tie it up 3-3. Then, during the super tense second half, Ryo would get subbed in. But he wouldn't just be looking to feed Nagi like he used to. Ryo would play with a totally independent, hyper-aggressive style that not even Seitoshi could easily predict. As the final minutes ticked down, Nagi would realize something genuinely scary. Because he changed past events so much, his memories of this specific match were now completely useless. The timeline had changed so much that he could no longer predict what was going to happen next. None of the players were in the exact same spots they were in his past life. Nagi would have to rely purely on his raw instincts. On the final, desperate attack of the game, Isagi would predict a loose ball and sprint aggressively down the field, drawing the entire U20 defense toward him. Spotting the opening, Ryo would send a pass. But it wouldn't be that soft, easy to trap pass Nagi was used to. It'd be a hard, chaotic, and insanely fast cross that demanded absolute, practically impossible perfection. Without even thinking, Nagi would leap into the air, twisting his body in a way he never had before. In that exact split second, he'd create a brand new mid-air trapping mechanic, a move he had never even attempted, not even in his past life. With one flawless, powerful motion, he'd smash the ball into the back of the net before the goalie could even blink. Goal! The ref blows the whistle. Blue Lock wins 4-3. Nagi would end the match with a brace, cementing himself as the undisputed hero of the day. He'd wrap up the story as the absolute #1 in Blue Lock. The player who completely took down Rin and Isagi. The ace striker who hard carried the squad against the U20 team, and the new face of Japanese soccer. As the stadium erupted into deafening cheers, Ryo would walk up, wiping the sweat off his face and smiling. Then he'd ask, "So, did you finally find your dream?" Nagi would look out at the massive pitch in front of him. His eyes would finally be full of life and burning with a true ego. Then he'd reply, "Not yet, but right now. I just want to keep playing until I figure it out." This victory wouldn't just shake the stadium, it would shock the whole world. Seitoshi Hiroshi would recognize Nagi as the striker Japan had been waiting for. Noel would see him as a dangerous anomaly, while Michael Kaiser would smirk, itching for the chance to crush him. Chris Prince would be fascinated by Nagi and want to train him, and Julian Loki would be impressed by his skills. In the shadows, Jinpachi Ego would just smile, knowing for a fact that with Nagi at the top, Blue Lock was finally ready to take on the world of soccer. And just like that, Nagi would step into a completely unknown future, finally motivated to conquer the world on his own terms. But the story is far from over. Do you guys want a part 2 of this video to find out what would happen to this insanely OP Nagi in the Neo Egoist League and the World Cup? If so, spam the comments down below asking for part 2. And while you're at it, drop some ideas for new what ifs for the next videos. I'm gonna wrap it up here. Remember, I'm Shoyo, and I'm out.